Spill the beans,
Unfortunately,
man.
it was kind of blurry for me,
Go
Okay.
ahead.
but
Spill the beans.
it was well for me because I came from this small town. I remember going. This was also in high school, going to Halloween, and I just thought it was so out there. Like I was like, oh my god, you could dress up as a Catholic priest and a nun on Dirty Six, and is that blasphemous? Because I was raised religious, and I just was like, oh my god, like these people and what they're wearing, and uh, not to get too political, but it was weird. The Leslie was a character,
Mm-hmm.
which however you want to explain Leslie. Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
I can give it a shot. Yeah. So, did you say yeah, Ian? You
Yeah,
want to go,
Go
or should
ahead.
I?
go
Okay.
ahead.
So, to just like disclosure, I think Leslie passed away like 2 or 3 years right after I moved here, and I
Me too.
was like 21, so I wasn't that familiar with him, them, they, it. And from what I understood, Leslie would ride around on a bicycle, semi-naked, super skinny dude, usually wear like a thong, speedo type thing, and sometimes he would cross dress. And I don't think he was like trans in the sense that we know trans today. It was
Right.
more like a quirky dude that every now and then would dress up in women's clothing and sometimes dresses and ride his bike with all his bits out. But everybody adored Leslie for being just true to his personality. And he was definitely just, I would say, like an Austin staple. People loved him.
Exactly. Yeah. It wasn't what I feel like could get very controversial. It didn't hit my radar like that. It was just this
Mm-mm,
free
mm-mm.
spirit Austinite thing, and you could just lay back and relax, and it was a party, and I could tell there the hippies were around, and even in Central Austin. So it was a cool city. And after I graduated in the 2000s, it just fit, especially as a business. Like I was getting into real estate, and even back then when I was Googling, I saw that it was going to be a good opportunity for a realtor, if not a business person in general. Was my take. Like graduating with an economics degree and a real estate license, I was thinking this city could have potential.
Mhm. Cool.
Do you want to go next? Is that
Yes.
a good take? Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, and then I want to touch too on what you were saying about Halloween on 6th Street. I don't know if it's this way anymore, but I remember the times I went, they would basically barricade both sides. So from I think IH 35 to like Congress area, they
Hmm.
would basically barricade all the bars and all the well, I was gonna say all the bars and restaurants. There's no restaurants. All the bars were open. And just thousands of people would show up with all sorts of crazy costumes. Some people would go all out and some not so much. Some people show up basically naked. And I do remember it was just a fun time. The first time I went, everyone was talking to everyone. I went as I Love Lucy or as Lucille Ball from I Love Lucy.
Right.
And I remember seeing like naughty nuns and people dressed up as dinosaurs and all sorts of different things. And it just felt like such a cool, free, fun, safe-ish space to party. And at that point, I didn't even drink. So, I mean, I wasn't drunk or anything. I was just walking around talking to people. Everyone wanted to get photos. This was when everyone finally, like, literally everyone had cameras on their phone. So that was really becoming a thing. And that was one of the main party pockets, I think. In Austin, like everyone knew that downtown Austin on Halloween was going to be fire. And I mean, I don't know that it's that much it's that way anymore. I don't know, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, so that's what JJ was referring to as Halloween on 6th Street. When I first came here, I officially moved here at the very start of 2010. I had just turned 21. And I had come here because I was offered a position at a children's weight loss camp in San Marcos, and I came from Minnesota. And never would I have thought that I would end up in the South. I just really liked the vibe in Austin. People, at least at that time, they still are. I mean, but more so then, people were super, super friendly. And it really felt to me like people actually wanted to make friends and genuinely form relationships, which was new to me because a lot of times in the North, like where I came from, um, people are distant and kind of private and sort of kept to themselves. And it was really hard to actually make genuine connections with people. So when I moved here, of course, the weather was different, but culturally it was completely different too. And that was really appealing to me. Like I mentioned earlier, I really didn't drink. I mean, I still don't really drink very much. So I wasn't a big partier, but I loved being out and about and I loved being involved just around the action. There was so much stuff going on all the time. We used to have a lot more live music than we do now. Um, I remember there is, what do you call it? Oh, it's called the Speakeasy
Oh, yeah.
downtown. Yeah. Okay.
Congress. Yeah.
Yep. On Congress. So they would do like Latin nights. They don't do that anymore, but they would do Latin nights where they would bring in a salsa band and people would dance salsa all night long. There was another place. I'm really into like Latin dancing. And there was another place almost across the street from there where the JW Marriott is. It was this old industrial uh, space, and it had like arched entryways lined with brick called Copa, basically across the way from the Speakeasy. And they would do all sorts of events there too. And of course, my thing, particularly at the time, was Latin dancing, so I would go for the salsa nights. And that was a small piece of what Austin was. And I do remember because we didn't have the Domain the way that we do today. We didn't have the East Side the way that we do today. So much of the action was happening downtown. So 6th Street was more polished. I don't want to say it was polished or like high end by any means, but it was okay. And I definitely after the pandemic is when we saw that go south. And now 6th Street's kind of gross, and I would say sort of dangerous sometimes. But we have so many other places to hang out that are really, really cool. The Domain, like in North Central Austin, that they opened that officially in 2007, but it really took off in, I want to say early 2016 when Rock Rose opened.
Mhm.
That became like a cleaner, higher end place for people to hang out and party and walk around and shop in the North Side. And I think the Domain, along with, of course, several IT campuses, has been a huge contributing factor for all the growth that we have seen on the North Side. So yeah, in 2010, a lot of it was partying downtown or Lady Bird Lake, very, very central. And over the last, I mean, I've been here 14 years, but over the last decade, my life has moved more north because I like things like the Domain and just stuff that's going on the north side of town. That's sort of
I
my
like to
take on it.
comment too about the
Yeah.
live music. That was
Yeah.
part of the party and the free spirit. Just you walk like a few bars over and it's just another band. It's some drums or somebody singing. It was so awesome in the
Mhm.
2000s and 2010s.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say up till about, I feel like honestly, like 2015, 2016, maybe you could find a lot more music out and about than you could today. I don't know. Ian, have a go?
I'm listening and taking it all in because Austin, Texas was one of those places that stood out to me from the rest of the countries and cities that I had visited. So much so that once I had visited in 2014 and I spent like a week, I said, oh, I need to be there. I just need to be there. It was a complete quality of life shift for me
Mhm.
because so like with Leslie, Austin, Texas was always known. You always had the motto, keep it weird.
And what's the backdrop? Like your comparison?
Oh,
Yeah,
good
where'd you come from?
question. Okay, so I was in corporate IT/HR, and they sent me all over the world to teach people and meet with people and train and stuff. And then, I was a kid essentially that would get these cultural experiences, but it felt like everyone was so caught up in the things that they had to do related to work that they didn't take the time to live. It's
Mm.
really
Mhm.
quite an interesting situation for me because I just graduated college and I'm thinking I don't want to not be happy. And every time I'd get back from a different country, so like I'd go to this country or go to these cities and I'd go do my thing, and people, you could tell that they would be at work and they would go through the motions, but they weren't always happy with their lives. And this is a hard thing. It's a hard thing to like internalize. And
Yeah.
I always say that I had a quarter life crisis because I saw I would get back to work, and I was in Chicago, Illinois, right, where I worked. And so I'd go back to work and I'd look around the office and everybody was just miserable all the time. The skies were always gray. It was always cold. And that's just my personal experience. And people didn't want to go out because it was too cold and traffic was a pain and nobody wanted to deal with anything. And so everything was inside. And I thought, man, I can't be doing this, man. So started looking for new places to shift that quality of life. And I came to Austin, spent some time, and it's just going back to Leslie. Leslie is one of those people where if you take everything that you consider normal, Leslie wasn't. Which was it was just an interesting thought to me, thinking what truly is freedom in the world, freedom of expression, freedom of being the person that you are. The fact that we like so Austin, and as you do more research, and listen, Leslie is not the reason I moved to Austin, but it sounds like that. That's a really weird. I didn't even know who Leslie was at the time. But think about it this way. So at the time, Austin was extremely diverse economically for everything. This is 2015. Everything extremely diverse culturally, food, and I'm a big food person. They had all kinds of food. It was like the fit capital of the U.S., fitness capital. You had the music capital. There were just all these things. People from all over would come to this little spot. It's in the center of Texas. It's the capital of Texas. Technically, it's in the center of the entire United States if you look at it on the map. And it was poised to have the best growth in every industry versus other cities. Houston was already huge. Dallas was already huge. San Antonio was one type of person that would live there. No offense. I'm just saying that was the type. That was the type of person that would live there. And then everything else was just everything else. Austin was the standout for it. And we also have weather, like changing in weather. I'm not saying that's the best thing, but it was different than other places. So anyway, all that. So I'm going to share my 2015, the first year I arrived, and I did 6th Street at Halloween.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was my 6th Street Halloween. And it was so ridiculous because you could just get away with anything.
Wait, did you really cut your hair, or like what's going on with that?
I sure did. I shaved.
You went all the way
so fast. Yeah.
What was your friend, the guy?
Nothing. That's the best part.
That's awesome.
That's the best. He was nothing.
So weird. I love it.
He was like, I'm going to put some webs on my body and some spiders and just go out. And that's the thing. It was just acceptable. And it's really funny. Yeah. So more about like Leslie, when I started hearing these stories, riding around half naked, I don't know if you know, but Austin has a naked bike ride. Like that's a thing that people in Austin do.
Really?
Barton Springs, not the actual springs where you go to swim, you pay to swim. But if you go a little further down the creek where it's open and it's on the greenbelt, most of the time I'll see people topless there, like men and women, because Austin is also legally a topless city. Right. So there are all these things that are expressive of your own freedom in Austin. Like you hear about Hippie Hollow and all that, where a lot of these other places, they're just like, I could never. It's like, okay, whatever. You shouldn't care. Now, I will say some people take it a little too far. Right. But that's not necessarily for me to judge. And, if you're a parent or something, I could see that being a concern. But Austin was really, really just, you have the freedom to do all the things that you want to do. And you have the opportunity, more so than a lot of other places in the United States, especially when you are talking back in 2015. 6th Street, Rainy Street, when you were on Rainy Street, it was awesome. Yeah. You didn't have high rises all up and down the street.
But you're talking about Rainy, because if you go too far back into the 2000s, it was the pre-gentrification East Side.
Yeah.
Rainy is an interesting history. Yeah,
especially for the past few decades.
Yeah.
Which is another perspective of Austin. Like that whole scene is a whole era.
That's actually really, really important. That's actually an important part of the cultural aspect of Austin and why it was such a music-centric city and food-centric city, and how it was divided up the way it was because of slavery in the past. Like that's how things were divided up. And it's just kind of moved into this world that most people don't even know. And like we were talking about, kind of getting commercialized and gentrified and losing a lot of what people considered its soul back in 2015 and prior. But I think it's developing a new soul, which we'll get into here in a little bit too.
I actually read, I don't know what this article is, but it was more in the 2010s, maybe 2015 or so. The headline was Austin was the most economically segregated. Economically. So they had a map where it showed just the different socioeconomics were very pocketed around the city.
Again, that was
not so much
design.
demographics, but I mean, all of it kind of mixes in.
Yeah. I mean, it was by design in the past, and it's just evolved to be out of that a little bit.
Right.
And like you talked about San Antonio briefly. San Antonio is very much like that. Very much like it's a lot more stark. Here's one group, here's another, here's another.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that has to do, without going too far down a rabbit hole, but I think just a lot of that has to do with it being the South and given the South's history, etc. That's another podcast for another time. But I mean, history has, yeah.
I was looking at the population, the numbers. So in 2000, Austin had 675,000 people. In what was it, 2010? In 2010, closer to 800,000, and then 2015, closer to 1 million. So I moved here right as the growth started to come up. Daphne, you were just before that, and you and JJ were both before that, like, growth spurt. I was right at the bottom of the bell curve. So and then all of a sudden, now, I mean, depending on who you ask, we could be anywhere between 1.345 to almost 2 million. Again, depending on who you ask. And if you're considering Austin proper, which has grown technically versus some of the suburbs too.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, just kind of an aside, but you guys came here and, like, JJ, you were in school and you had an idea of that this city had a lot of potential, and Ian, you took the time to come here and really analyze if it was going to be a good fit for you. I just liked it. I was like 21. I didn't know anything. I'm like, this place is cool. I'm going to stay. We'll see what happens. And it just happens that I got into real estate in 2012. But it wasn't because, wow, I saw so much potential in Austin. I just needed something to do. So I feel very lucky to have been able to grow up at the same time Austin was growing up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's kind of a once in a lifetime thing. I think it's not. Yeah. This just as an aside, a different take, I guess.
Yeah. What has happened in the past decade has been astronomical. I mean, I remember those lists that Ian's talking about, like fastest growing city, number one economy. Even a recent one was a headline, like the most millionaires, the highest rate of growth in regards to millionaire population by percentage. Not the most millionaires, but the most, like, it doubled in the past 8 years or something like that.
Those numbers are tricky because basically, if you bought a house that was over, I don't know, 500,000, maybe even 700,000, that counts. That could count depending on how much you put down and all that. And if the value of that
net worth
home goes up over, then that makes you technically a millionaire. They're fudging numbers with that one, but I hear you.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, that still means money came in. Yeah.
We have a lot more money here. So, okay.
I like it. I mean, I like that it's grown. I don't know.
We're in real estate, obviously.
How much? Well, right. That's actually a really good point. Depending on who you are and what you did, how does it affect you. So one thing that we rarely talk about on any of our channels is like Austin, Texas started off as this small town with, you know, a handful of people that were kind of cool and eclectic. And now you have this massive traffic ridden city because you had so many people that relocated, would work remote, and then now everybody has to, you know, during the pandemic, and now everybody's kind of going back to work and getting back into the swing of normal life, that weren't working remote. And so you have a lot, I want to say 4 times the amount of traffic easily from when we first moved here. Would you say that? You feel that?
Yeah. JJ, since you came here,
I think what's hard, there's definitely more growth. It's just hard to think if I'm getting older and maturing in this professional lifestyle, or is Austin turning me into this as I follow real estate sales? Like, what would a freshman at UT think of Austin now? Do they think it's free spirit? Do they think
they have a show for that?
Oh yeah, all the Netflix shows.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I get they're sensationalized, but at least they have them, right? And you can kind of watch along and hear what people think. Also, UT it just became an Ivy League school.
Yeah, that wasn't. I mean, it's kind of bougie and prestigious, right? Like, it's just different. So, is it perceived the same way? If you're young, like, is ACL still hip and cool, or is it like, this is techie and bougie, and I'm gonna go to Hermes on South Congress? Is it Hermes? Did I say that right?
So one of the questions I would have is, when you were younger and you were looking at the colleges to go to, or where you wanted to, you know, grow up, what you wanted to do when you grew up, what are the colleges that stuck out in your mind?
Me?
Yeah.
USC and UT.
Well, that's because you were close to here. But right, like you would always hear the Harvard and the MIT and all those, right? The Fighting Irish, Duke, and those, right? These Ivy League schools, and those would bring people to different places. So I think that that's actually a very solid, we'll call it a political play for them to earn that reputation, because all that's going to do is further fuel growth for people coming here.
And a different type of demographic coming too. It is
a different demographic, but now it's almost a lofty goal to come to Austin for school and all of these tech and other types of companies. If you want to be a farmer, guess where you can come? Somehow you can come to Austin. If you want to manufacture chips, somehow you can come to Austin. If you want to be in healthcare, somehow you can come to Austin.
You said farmer, and I thought ATM or A&M.
Yeah, I was thinking A&M is like
School of Animal Husbandry.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that at all. That's really interesting.
Wait, back to the Ivy League story. What is it, like a certain program? I didn't read the whole article. I saw the headline. Is it a certain program, or was it like the whole, like, how do you get the Ivy League? Were you following that designation?
The designation, that's something we should look up and then revisit, see if we can dig into that a little bit and bring that back on the next podcast, because that is a good question. Like anything,
but it is considered.
There's some criteria in there that we have to fact check.
As of May 24th, May 10th, 2024, 2 Texas schools, University of Texas in Austin and Rice University in Houston, have joined the ranks of Ivy League institutions, according to Forbes. These 2 institutions are attracting the smartest students and the plaudits from, what the hell is a plaudit? From employers. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
this is very
interesting
recent,
because, you know, obviously we have all these major companies. Yeah. It's great. It's a great talent pool. That's one reason why so many employers from different cities and states have relocated to Austin.
Yeah. Now this actually makes sense. I would never have thought that, but yeah, it would make sense that UT would become an Ivy League school.
Well, and now you have look at the potential growth for some of these areas in Austin. So you've got Austin proper, and then you have all these suburbs. If you compare us to Houston, we're like a quarter. I don't know about a quarter. We're maybe a third the size, right? You think?
If that, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's significantly smaller.
Let's say we're a quarter or a
Mhm.
third the size of Houston. Houston has like 4 downtowns, right? So what does that do to the density of Austin proper? What does it do to the properties downtown, right? Because like what are we saying, that Round Rock will soon be a downtown of Austin because we're tied in with the same MSA, right? Does Kyle get swallowed up and become part of Austin at some point? I mean, I don't think it's going to be that big, but if you look at Houston, that's kind of how it's grown, right? You look at New York, you look at Chicago, all of those sections, all of those what were suburbs are just swallowed by the main city.
In regards to like a main town center,
I mean, I think really what's happening and what's going to continue to happen is I think we'll have different centers throughout Austin proper. I don't know that Round Rock will ever become its own. I mean, they have a downtown, but like that really hasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, but Round Rock was cows. When I moved here in 2015, there were 3 neighborhoods. I moved to Austin. Let me be clear. I moved to Austin and I moved to Runberg because I didn't know better.
Holy moly!
Nice.
Holy moly! Yeah, exactly.
Shout out to Runberg.
Right? Because I didn't have a realtor. I didn't understand. And then immediately I was like, okay, I got to buy a house. I got to do this. I got to do that. So I learned very quickly. But like I don't even remember where we were going with that. Something about city centers. But now they have these city centers all over the Austin areas. Domain being one of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Round Rock's getting one. Taylor, flipping Hutto has one. Leander, Kyle has one. Like they're all building up around all these little city centers, and so I could just see it becoming this amalgamation of live, work, play areas, and downtown. Like people say Austin, they don't actually know what they mean. No one else knows what they mean.
Maybe we will see.
I'm a big downtown fan. So I lived downtown for like 12 years.
Remember?
Yeah.
And that's not counting like my multi years at the university. But I just think there's so much central. There's like University of Texas, which is huge, especially fundamentally economically. You have the college town, this huge public university. You have the Capitol, and then you have all these state buildings that revolve around the politics.
Yep.
And then you got these tech. Well, I don't know if they're all at the Google building or the Facebook building now, but it's just so much there that, the growth is still happening in those other town centers.
So it's interesting that you say that, because if you look at it, we've got all of those tech buildings downtown, right?
Right.
But then, just like Daphne was saying, you go to the Domain, all those same companies also have presence in the Domain.
Yeah.
Right. And then if there's a city, like a central place in Kyle where they do the same thing, I can see the tech companies going there too. And all these little like hubs. It's interesting how they're doing that.
It is interesting. And I think it's actually necessary to some degree, because we do have, though Austin is significantly smaller than Houston, than Dallas, it can take a very long time to get to these places. And so few neighborhoods are walkable. It would be so convenient and practical to have these little city centers in our little cities. So we don't have to drive an hour. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and even like if you look at the downtowns, it's so funny because we'll say Sixth Street. I was actually out on Lake Travis in Devil's Cove, which I got no business being on Devil's Cove. But there were people getting married. There were people like doing the keg stands, falling off the boat, belly flapping like you wouldn't believe. It was ridiculous. But I bring that up because there were a bunch of people. So I'm originally from Chicago. There were people from Chicago, Ohio. I don't think anybody said Minnesota. My point is, you still have all these people coming here. And this guy was here for his bachelor party. He was, 20 something. And he's like, yeah, man, I've always just heard how fun Austin is, and it does not disappoint. I was like, whoa, okay. I mean, he was having a blast, but it's funny because he was like, yeah, I was on 6th Street, but apparently it was the wrong one. Which is funny because we have Dirty 6th, we have West 6th, we have East 6th. It's like, oh, okay, right? Because it didn't feel the same back when I first came. The different subsections of 6th Street, right? And I feel like that's what's happening kind of all over Austin.
Yeah.
And now we have like 40 Torchy's restaurants. It's a little much, Torchy's. Stop it.
Yeah, it's a lot of Torchy's. They're going national too. One of my friends was saying that they were trying to open in Utah, but apparently there's not really a market for Torchy's in Utah.
Oh.
Yeah.
If anything, I would think there was a huge market for it.
I can't remember if it was Utah, but I remember she said her wife is one of like the regional managers, and they were trying to open it in one of these kind of like obscure states. And I think she said Utah, and I was like, really? Apparently they're focused on other things there, but yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So now you know that.
Now I know.
But yeah, we have a lot. I mean, we have a lot of businesses that were started here that are national now, and that's kind of another conversation altogether. But okay, so yeah.
I was gonna say, how do you
For
feel
what?
about property valuations then and now, and what that's doing for people?
I got my real estate license in the 2000s, 2005 to be exact. And what made sense to me was during the 08 financial crisis, the headlines that were sticking out to me were that Austin was super resilient. It didn't go through any wild ups and downs. Totally different now, because now we're the biggest roller coaster. But that I remember being in the median price point was in the 200s in the late, like 08, 09. And it's been changing ever since. After that, we're resilient after the crash. I think 2014 was like takeoff time.
It's really, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know what to make of it. I know we're still adjusting, so what's probably more affordable, maybe?
I had a thought when you were talking about like the early 2000s and resiliency. So I came here, like I said, I moved here in 2010 and I got licensed in 2012. And before, I was living at home in Minnesota with my mom, who was in real estate. She's still in real estate. And I was there, and I wasn't active in real estate, but I saw it in 2006, 7, and 8 when everything crashed and Minnesota was hit really hard. And when I came here, I remember thinking, I didn't know. I really didn't know. I was young and I didn't really do a very good job of trying to educate myself. I wasn't that interested, but just from conversations I was hearing and numbers that I was seeing, it's like Austin was not hit that hard. Texas was not hit that hard by the economy. And at the time, the reasoning was because Texas has oil. And remember, oil prices spiked during the downturn in 2008. So while everything was burning down, oil was still holding its ground. That kind of rhymed. And I think because of that, that's why it wasn't hit so hard and it was able to grow much quicker because there wasn't any recovery period. It did what it did and then it just took off. And now we're having our downturn, I guess you could say, just because of inflation and the pandemic and printing money and all that kind of stuff. And we can't lean on oil. It's not like, oh, well, we're good. We're on oil. I think the argument for me anyway, before when people asked if Austin would ever crash, I thought, no, because we have IT, tech is not going to go anywhere. And it's not really going anywhere, but the way things are being done is changing and people are getting laid off and home values and prices are going up, but people are not necessarily making that much more money than they were 2-3 years ago.
So I have to talk about this while we were sitting here having our conversations about Austin. We've had a lot of stuff in the chat, a lot of chatter in the chat, but because we're on a different platform, it's not showing up on here the same way. So we'll have to figure that out. But I'm going to go through some of these comments if you're cool with it.
Please.
Yeah, let's do it.
So there's been a lot. Aaron, wow, what was that laugh, Ian? Did you hear that? Grown up laugh. Ha ha. No. Okay, so Aaron was talking about Austin is about an eighth of the size of Houston if you do per mileage. That's kind of interesting. And then Dinosaur D mentioned that the Leander Springs, the lagoon, was canceled. Did y'all hear that?
Yes, it was. Yes,
I know.
I did.
Isn't that frustrating? I'm so excited for that because then we could have something that Houston has that we would say is no. I'm just kidding. Houston does have one of those, by the way. Live, work, play is taking over. Aaron says that, which is just like the Domain or Velocity or the Co-op in some of these other places. Let's see. Aaron's letting us know that he drove to Dallas this weekend. Don't know why that's relevant, but probably because Austin is in the middle of everything. Actually, oh my gosh, I just remember I came back from Banff. So I was in Canada. The weather caused the planes from Austin, I guess, not to be able to come pick. There was some reason why everything got delayed. And so 6 of us, random strangers, just sitting looking at each other. I was like, hey, y'all want to get a car? And so we ended up splitting a lift from Dallas to Austin, and it was cheaper than any one of us renting a car. But it was so easy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was easy. But then there was like this major storm, and it was only a little bit of hail, but it was a major storm, and the Uber or the Lyft driver scared the bejesus out of everybody. But it was good. Anyway, Dinosaur D says we need more city centers. Is there something new building up in Leander? So there's North Line. Do you know of anything else new, Daphne?
No. But I was going to touch on the Leander Springs.
Please.
Just as a bit of an aside. So in 2020, I think it was late 2020 or early 21, they announced they were going to build Leander Springs. They were supposed to have their grand opening for New Year's of 23. So it's supposed to be January 31st, 2022. And it was all over the news. And as you know, that's when our market was on fire. The houses were selling for like $200,000-$300,000 over the asking price, blah, blah, blah. And I had so many clients that wanted to move to Leander because of Leander Springs. Yeah. And the thought was, we're going to buy here now. We're going to hold. It's going to explode. This thing's going to be awesome. We're going to have our own city center. And I remember telling every single one of those people, don't trust anything until it's done. Because I feel like in Austin, in the Austin area, they're always like, we're going to build a new domain here. We're going to build a new domain here. My first house that I bought in 2016 in like southwest Pflugerville, the salesperson for the builder was like, there's going to be a new domain half a mile away from here. Guess what? That never came to fruition. And I think that happens all over the dang place in Austin. So I hear about these things popping up like these city centers, and I'm always extremely skeptical, and I rarely believe it. And even even like Northeast Village by Samsung, that's still taken like 6 years to like.
Yeah, but it's coming along.
Yeah, it's longer.
Okay.
Like that.
I was being bitter about this.
It's gonna take a minute. I mean, like the Leander thing might pop off maybe, I don't know, 2030, 2033.
Man, it needs to happen before then. Have you been outside? It is hot.
But they need more. They need a good economic boom.
Yeah,
they need something because there's nothing in Leander aside from beautiful neighborhoods. That's it.
So I was on 360. You know what else? Okay, this is kind of an aside, but it still applies. Hey, do you know who Yammy Noob is?
No.
Okay, so Yammy Noob is a guy. He has, I don't know, over 1 million subs on YouTube. I bring him up because he, along with a ton of other people that I'm discovering, are, I'll call them influencer status, and they live in Austin. And I'm slowly discovering all these people. I was like, oh, they're in Austin. Oh, they're obviously Joe Rogan. Oh, kind of in Austin. So we still have, that's another economy style that's growing in the area that a lot of people aren't paying credence to.
Yeah.
Right. So and we're talking people with fluidity of money, investors, which goes back to your Leander Springs and some of these other projects that have failed, because it's like, I'm going to put some money into this. Oh, I don't know. I'm pulling out. Like, it's not even a second thought.
I think a lot of it just kind of, just kind of a side thing too. This conversation is full of asides. But like the Leander Springs thing, I think a lot of it has to do just with interest rates because they were starting at the time when interest rates were so low, and then they tripled in a few
Yeah.
months. So yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, that's like I said, kind of sad. But going
Few
back to
more.
what you're saying, there's so many influencers here. Yeah, I'm sorry.
There are tons. I just want to get through the comments because I want them to know that
Yes.
we are here listening and we appreciate them, right? So
Yeah.
Aaron said he likes how Ian switched off of dial-up finally. It's not dial-up. It was the program actually works better because it's made for internet. Indeed is at the domain right by IBM. So we knew that. So it's
Yes.
down. So it's on 360
360.
and
2222?
at the domain. Yeah, 2222 and at the domain. So they have at least
Yes.
those two offices. Do they have one downtown as well, or?
Yeah.
I thought they did.
And they
They
have
do.
one down. So that's what I'm
Looks like it's
saying.
that one.
So a lot of these companies are doing that. They're just putting these hubs in other places. Not WeWork. What's the other one with the W? WordPress. Big Austin company. Yeti, big Austin company. We have all of these really cool things.
Amazon.
Dinosaur D. He says this is the premium channel. We get ENHD. It's just a new platform. So
we should
let's
launch
see.
this podcast on OnlyFans and just keep the podcast exactly as it is. And see what
I
happens.
started an OnlyFans channel. I never actually pursued it, but I started an OnlyFans channel, and it was just to be OnlyFans, where I played sultry music and had fans spinning in houses, like fancy fans spinning in houses real slow. That's it. Because only
How to do?
I never.
I like to
pursued it.
showcase. I've seen some cool ceiling fans.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
we could
what are they like? Jungle
that.
feathers. You're like, what is happening? Why are these here? Why is it
Like the
wicker? Why do you have a wicker
leaves.
fan?
Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah.
Or the ones that look like old school propellers.
Yeah,
Yes. And so,
like
yeah.
an old airplane or
But-
something.
Yeah, I don't think that'll go back anymore. Maybe I'll just do it OnlyFans on Instagram and do that. That's what I should do. All right, so let's see. You could dress up the fans in lingerie. Dinosaur D thinks that we could do that. I don't know
do
how
that.
that would work, unless I'm
Try
not
it
even
on.
going to go there. Stick a
Okay.
stocking on a fan blade. Might stretch the stocking. Some of these. fan blades
We need a different brainstorming session.
Yes, yeah. I like it. Cool. So yeah, let's see. This is another big one from Dinosaur D. Did you hear that Austin has negative population growth for the first
Yes.
time in like 40
Yes.
years?
Yes.
Travis County.
I saw that today. Yeah.
Yeah. It's Travis County, which is interesting because that's Austin proper.
Yes.
People are frustrated. People are very frustrated.
How many
Especially the
clients?
ones that came here.
How many clients have you run into that are like, I'm leaving, it's too busy here?
Mm,
I have a handful.
busy.
I hear
What
that
do you mean by
all the
busy?
time. It's too much. It's too noisy.
Oh.
Now, generally, there's I'll call it an age demographic related to that statement,
Right.
Sure.
but they're like, I gotta go.
Mhm.
You know, I've actually kind of always wondered that because we've always heard that Austin is such a young town, and I had two sets of aunts and uncles that came to Austin. It's going to be 3 years ago, I guess, and we went to Hula Hut for dinner one night, right there on the lake. And they are my aunts and uncles are kind of like in their 60s, mid 60s. And one of them in particular, he's the oldest one of the group, and he's got white hair and a gray beard. And he's like, "Where are all the old people?" And I looked around, I'm like, "I think right here at this table." And it was a joke, obviously, but it's true. We have such a young demographic, and I've always wondered if Austin, being a young town, is ever going to age, or if it always will be for young people. And after a certain point, you leave. And that we don't necessarily need an answer to that, but it's something that I've always thought about and wondered.
Oh, well, yeah, but I don't think that's by design. I think that's just like JJ was saying, how life evolves, right? Because when you're in a college center, everything is so fast paced, and then you always want something to do. But then they start building families, and you realize that in order to have a house that costs something reasonable, I'll say reasonable to that the median population or the average population in that area, they generally have to move out a ways, right? And so that just it's a natural evolution of things. And then you go even further when you just want your privacy in your own space and 100 acres, right? And so it forces people to go further and further and further away from the city centers. But I think that's all metropolitans, right?
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
so. So I'd
I
be
feel like
curious for
the
more
events
recent
here.
case studies on that. I think the pandemic changed a lot of that too.
I think it's the events though too, right? Like, does every city have an ACL or like?
Bro, I'm going to pull that up in a second. Let me get a couple other of these comments. So
Yeah.
Dinosaur D says, if this was Australia, people would just put up with it. I'm glad people here vote with their wallets and their feet. I don't know what that means. How do they vote with their? Oh, leaving.
Like they dance. Oh,
Yeah. Like at that, chicken bingo. So let's see. Austin is due for rebalancing. We were doing so well year on year, and I feel the boom came too quick, too big. Slow,
Yes.
sustainable growth was nice. Ended around 2019. So Dinosaur D, I'm going to argue that it ended around. Oh, the slow, sustainable growth. Y'all agree with that? 2019.
yes.
Yeah.
I'd say like early 2020, even a little bit into the pandemic.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Because I'm sorry, I'm just thinking like it was 21 when prices went crazy. 2020, you could still get a fairly affordable home with obviously still very low interest rates. Like 600,000 in 2020 would go a long way.
Yeah.
Today,
Oh, gosh,
not
yeah.
so much. Yeah.
Well, and property taxes are interesting too, because Austin proper, the property taxes are pretty darn low compared to a lot of the suburbs with new construction.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely.
Did you know?
What?
I've got this listing in Bastrop, and the tax rate out there is 1.4%.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Crazy.
Which
Crazy.
is rare for
Yeah.
Bastrop, but what they're trading is they've got probably no amenities, no natural gas, probably all on septic. Like there's some sacrifices there. If you had to call the police, it'll take them, 40 minutes to get there, that sort of thing, because you better have your own gun. It's all that sort of stuff, right? I'm just being real about it.
Yeah.
You do have
Just
to
a
look
side
at
note. Just a side note. It was
Yeah.
All right,
Look
I'm
at
going to
the
share
property
this.
taxes.
This goes to what you were talking about, JJ. Wait.
ACL?
Here. Oh, not that one. This one. Okay, so I just went into Austin. Don't worry about that. I just went into Austin, and it's so funny. And I typed groups on Meetup, and this is one thing that stood out in Austin versus most other places I went. How many events, how many things are happening in the city? Right?
Yeah.
Like what's just going on? So if I do by this weekend, 3D artists meetup, sip socialize, sparkling conversations, double doula. What? Oh, death doula. That's not better. Pickleball, Barton Creek hike. Like this is Austin always. There's always something cool to do. Mankind Project Men's Lunch. I don't know what that is.
Men's
Prime time
lunch.
backyard movie nights outside. Like this is one platform for that. We still have Do 512. We still have Eventbrite. We still have like all these different things, all these different events. And this is just every weekend in Austin. Right? So many other cities are nothing like that. And you don't really have to go too far to get all over. Like a half-hour radius goes from Georgetown to San Marcos from Austin, as long as the traffic isn't silly. And it'll go as far out as Elgin and Bastrop or to Dripping. 30 minutes. That whole circle. San Antonio, it's 30 minutes just to get to the other side of San Antonio.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my rant. Welcome to my TED Talk.
Yeah, there's definitely always stuff going on. It just really depends what you want to do and what you're into.
I'm into everything, all of it.
Yeah.
So Dinosaur D says, considering cost of living has increased by about 20%, cost of housing in Austin is about 30% up in the last 4 to 5 years. So this is a question for y'all. Can we ever expect house prices to drop further? Maybe another 10% or so? That's an open-ended question. Do we think house prices are going to drop another 10%?
It's hard to tell right now. I actually get this question with clients all the time. And the consistent answer that I'm giving is I always tell people when I don't know something, because I don't know most things. So I don't really know. But this year especially, it's going to be really weird because the Fed's been saying that they're going to drop interest rates and they haven't done it. I don't know that they're going to or not. But also the other thing to keep in mind is that this is an election year and weird stuff happens in election years. A lot of times during the summertime to the end of the year, nobody makes any moves because nobody knows what's going to happen with the government. And yeah, I mean, so my answer to that is, will they drop another 10%? We don't know. Also, it's largely dependent on what they end up doing with interest rates, if anything at all.
Yeah, I think interest rates play a big factor. And also it's hard to tell. It's a bit of a blanket statement because you got to get into the neighborhood and on the block to see what's really happening. I think generally though, it's going to be a little flat. I think what's also keeping prices at a flat pace, in my opinion, is that sellers also don't want to sell either because of their interest rate. So there's a little bit of a, I'm gonna hold this particular price, or I'm not gonna sell until I feel like, I call it the 2021 hangover. They're still kind of into that a little bit, and the interest rates.
Yeah.
So, and lastly, I think if tech is still moving in here, that's another factor. Like, is tech still resilient and still growing here? If it starts to leave, obviously if it turns into like a Detroit, like the Detroit tech thing, of if that's even a possibility, yeah, that's going to affect it. But from what I'm reading, there's still a lot of economic growth opportunities in regards to job growth. So generally, I'd say it's going to be flat over the next year. General.
So I'm going to use a two-part to answer this because John S. says, he says, these are my favorite Austin realtors. Thank you for all you guys do to help us in the craziness out there. Thank you very much, John, for being here with us and hanging out and participating. We do appreciate that. John also says, I'm still dumbfounded by how people keep saying Austin's housing market is unaffordable. I lived in Seattle for several years and I rarely heard that up there. We sold our 1,900 square foot home for $950,000.
Yeah.
I will say the reason why I have this Easton Park thing up is I have some clients that they're relocating from Texas to Seattle. Seattle, for them, near impossible to find a home to buy at anything less than $1 million. Like, it's just unreasonably high and fast paced. It's where Austin was during the pandemic times. Seattle is still like that, right? But if you look at something like Easton Park, I'm bringing this up because this is what's happening all over Austin. We have a lot of just outside of Austin proper, or maybe on certain areas, we have these master plan communities. So you've got these communities. So like Easton Park, they're building 10,000 houses, 12,000 houses, something like that. Santa Rita Ranch is 20,000 houses. Like, they're building all of these houses in these communities, and they're supposed to be live, work, play, just like the Domain. So you have the houses, and then you put all the stuff in it. Steiner Ranch was one of those, right? I bring this up because if you look in this community alone right now, Easton Park right now, okay, 12,000 houses. Right now, there are 75 houses active for sale on the market, which means if you want to buy a house, not only are we talking about these resale homes where people are selling and moving, you're also talking about the new, I haven't even talked about the new construction homes that the builders can still build. And so then it goes back to the pricing. Could it drop 10% in a neighborhood like this? Probably.
Yeah. I have another instance. One of the episodes was 78704 South Lamar listing. There's about, regarding the comps, older homes remodeled, maybe like 100 Central Austin $1 million houses that are active. So there's definitely some room to negotiate there.
Daphne, have you seen people? How do I say this without getting yelled at? Have you seen people offering less than list price on most properties?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, I'm just making sure. No matter
I'm that
what the list
people.
price is.
I'm that people. No,
Yeah.
I mean it's situational, right? We all know that
Sure.
it's situational. I think we all set that expectation with our clients. If it's been on the market for a long time, if it's not moving, then we can go in low. But obviously, if it hit the market this weekend and there's an open house and 75 parties showed up to see it, no, we're probably not going to get a deal.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I've been able to get some pretty crazy deals for my client. Like I had one couple last year who bought a ranch in Lockhart, and we got $400,000 off the list price.
Wow.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
insane. How
It
large
is
was? How many
crazy.
acres was that?
55.
Got it. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
of course, this is an exception, right? Like definitely
Right.
that's an exception, but we do have more room to negotiate. Definitely, especially with so many cash buyers right now. I feel like so many of the clients that I have are cash. There can be room given the right circumstances.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's good.
Yeah.
A couple more comments. Dinosaur D says, we're like in this weak period of stagnation. I also saw a report that mainstream media has been augmenting data to show that housing has been flat in the last 3 years and not declining at all. There's definitely a tech adjustment. The recent round of layoffs that started in April is around 10% of workforce in tech. How do you feel about that? The tech layoffs. What are your thoughts on that and how that's shaping Austin? Since that was the whole topic to begin with. Austin's past, present, and future.
I think there's a lot of tech speculation on top of the inflation that has occurred. So whatever cloud of Elon Musk and Google and Facebook or whatever, it's clearing.
What do you mean it's clearing?
Like, is it really worth that much? Is tech really this resilient in this time?
It depends who's running it, right? So, because Elon just loves to let go of people randomly. I have a client that used to work for HR at Tesla, and I love Tesla, but the way they're doing things is scary. And she said this gal that worked in HR, her job was just to randomly fire people. There wasn't necessarily a rhyme or reason. She just had to let them go. And she said she made good money working there, but she felt like she sold her soul. And then one day somebody randomly fired her. You know? So Tesla's this whole other animal. The way they're running things is, I don't get it. But then all the other tech companies are having layoffs, and that's just a reflection of what our economy's doing, I think, all around the country.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're in a position where if someone, here's the thing, we're all realtors, we do sell houses, but there has to be a level of transparency if we're in a public setting like this. And so the things we say are how we feel in the moment based on our experience, based on our stats. We've been in this business for a while. So I had to preface it with that to then say, one way some buyers can win is just like Daphne and JJ and I have been talking about, is if you are looking for a 10%, there are houses out there where you will get that 10%. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you need the market to adjust 10%. Will it? Don't know. But there are houses out there where you can get that 10 or more percent if the offer is presented in such a way. And this applies to new construction. It applies to resale. It applies to also acreage. It applies to multifamily. You just have to have a strong representation and an understanding of the market and the house that you're putting the offer in on. So I didn't really answer your question other than saying that it is possible to get 10%, but I didn't answer your question about what I think the market is going to do.
Yeah, because he asked if it was all going to come down another 10%, right?
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm going to take the liberty to say I think we don't really know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We don't really know yet.
Yeah, we can be, if we answer that, we can be wrong. If I say you can get 10% off of a lot of houses, out there, I can't be wrong, because that's a true statement.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
true. That is true.
Daphne, we're
What?
at an hour and 2 minutes. Did you know that?
We are. Yeah, I know. I've been watching the little clock.
I love it.
We covered a lot of ground today, you guys.
I think so. I don't even know if we talked about the future, though.
I think we
Maybe
just
could do
did
that.
Mm,
a little bit.
I mean, that was weak sauce, right? Like
Present-
we
present
spent a lot of
future.
time on the
Murky
past and what's going on presently. So we'll have
Yeah.
to, at some point, we'll have to revisit and talk about where we see the future and why. I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm full of it.
Yeah.
Let us know. in
No,
the
I'm with
comments
you. I'm with you.
what
We
think.
touched on it just a little
Yeah.
bit.
I love the viewer engagement today. That's so valuable and so helpful.
It is extremely. I need to find a better way to make sure that that engagement shows up on the screen.
Yeah.
But
I
this,
missed
like
that.
we had said, this is a different platform that we were using before. So, and they just added some new features. So we're excited to bring all these to the light for y'all.
Yeah. I love connecting with people like this. It's very, very cool.
Daphne, you want to close
Cool.
us out?
Yeah, I guess that is our overview. We talked about what Austin was when we moved here, each of us, and why we came here, and then what it has become. We didn't really cover the future of where we think it's headed, but I think that would be a great follow-up episode for the near future.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we got today on the Real Estate Lab. I can't say it. Real Estate Lab podcast.
I love it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for
See
tuning in, y'all.